You clicked because you want to protect what's yours when the lights go out. Good. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 3 ways to build a Faraday cage, not the expensive kind, not the kind that needs a contractor, the kind I watched an Amish family build in an afternoon using things they already had in the barn. Here's the part nobody tells you. A Faraday cage doesn't need electricity to work. It needs no batteries, no power, no grid. It just sits there, silent, protecting everything inside it from the day the grid finally fails. And the Amish have been quietly building these for longer than most people realize. The first time I saw one near Millersburg, Ohio, I didn't even know what I was looking at. I thought it was an old grain bin in the corner of a workshop. I was wrong. By the end of this, I'll show you the third method. The one I found buried in a defense study from 1963, the one that costs almost nothing and works better than the box the survival companies sell you for $300. And if you already own a home, an old one, the kind built before 1980, this works for you too. You don't need to build anything new. You'll see. Let me tell you why this matters more than you think. Most folks believe that when the power goes out, it comes back. A few hours, maybe a day. The truck shows up, the lineman fixes the wire, life goes on. That's the story we've all been told. But there's another kind of outage, the kind that doesn't come back the next morning. A solar storm, a lightning strike that travels through the wiring, a surge that rides down the power line and into every device plugged into your wall. In 1989, a solar storm hit the power grid in Quebec, Canada. 6 million people lost power in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Transformers melted. Some of them never came back. The replacement parts took months. Now think about everything in your home that has a tiny computer chip inside it. Your truck, your generator, your radio, your well pump controller, your phone, the inverter on your solar panels. All of it runs on circuits thinner than a human hair. And a strong enough surge of energy doesn't break those circuits with fire or smoke. It just fries them. Silent, invisible, permanent. You'd flip the switch and nothing happens. You'd turn the key and hear clicking. You'd reach for the radio to find out what's going on, and the radio would be a dead brick in your hands. That's the part that scares me, not the dark, the silence. Now, here's what makes me angry. People are spending real money trying to solve this. I've watched men spend $400, $500, $600 on a fancy metal box from a survival catalog. Shiny, official looking, comes with a certificate, and half the time it doesn't even work the way they think it does, because they don't understand the one principle that makes a Faraday cage actually protect anything. And the Amish, they never bought the box. If you want to go deeper into the knowledge these families have kept alive for generations, the food storage, the cellar systems, the tools that work when everything else fails, I put it all together in a field guide called the Amish Pantry Blueprint. It's the same practical wisdom you're hearing right now, laid out step by step so you can apply it to your own home. Along with the Amish Stockpile Blueprint and the Complete Amish Resilience Field Edition, it's available for $97, and you can find the link in the description below. This is the kind of knowledge that doesn't go out of style and doesn't need a power grid to be useful. Now let me show you how this actually works. Because once you understand the principle, you'll never pay for one of those boxes again. Faraday cage is named after a man named Michael Faraday, an English scientist. In 1836, he did an experiment that changed everything, though almost nobody remembers it today. He built a room. He covered the whole thing in metal foil. Then he stepped inside it, sat down, and had his assistants blast the outside of that room with powerful electrical charges, sparks flying everywhere on the outside. And inside, Faraday held up his instruments. Nothing. No charge. No current. Total calm. Here's why. When an electrical charge hits a metal surface, the energy doesn't pass through it. It spreads out across the outside skin of the metal and travels around it. The charge stays on the surface. It never reaches the empty space in the middle, so whatever you put inside that metal shell is protected. The energy goes around it, not through it. That's the whole secret. A metal shell, fully closed, nothing inside touching the metal. 3 things. That's all it takes. 1, a continuous metal enclosure with no big gaps. 2, the contents inside must not touch the metal directly. You need a layer of insulation. Cardboard, wood, cloth. 3, it has to be closed all the way around. Top, bottom, all sides. Now, here's what the survival companies don't want you to think too hard about. You already own most of what you need to build this. And the Amish figured this out generations ago without ever reading a physics book. They figured it out the way they figure out everything, by watching, by testing, by passing it down. Let me show you the first way, the metal trash can method. This is the simplest one, and it's the one I tell everyone to start with. You take a galvanized steel trash can, the plain kind, the kind with a metal lid that fits down snug over the rim. You can find one at any hardware store for around $25. Some folks already have one in the garage. Galvanized steel is the key, not plastic with a metal coating, solid steel. Now, the metal can is your shell, but remember the second rule, nothing inside can touch the metal directly. So you line the inside, the bottom, the walls, all of it with cardboard or with a thick wool blanket. The Amish near Holmes County use old horse blankets for this. Heavy wool works beautifully. You set your radio, your spare phone, your two-way radios, a small solar charger inside the lined can, wrapped in cloth or sitting in cardboard boxes so nothing metal inside touches the can's wall. Then you put the lid on, and here's the step everyone gets wrong. The lid has to make solid metal-to-metal contact with the rim of the can all the way around. If there's a gap, if there's paint or rust or grime breaking that contact, the energy can leak in. So before you seal it, take a strip of aluminum tape, the kind used for furnace ducts, costs about $6 a roll, and run it around the seam where the lid meets the can. That tape bridges the gap. It makes the whole thing one continuous metal skin. That's it. That's a working Faraday cage for about $30. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, that sounds too simple. Where's the catch? There's no catch. That's exactly what bothers people. It's so cheap and so simple that nobody believes it could replace the $300 box. But the science is identical. Faraday's room and your trash can work on the exact same principle. Energy on the outside skin, empty calm on the inside. The Amish understood something about simple things that we forgot. Simple things don't break. Simple things don't need a warranty. Simple things still work 50 years from now. But there's a problem with the trash can. It's small. You can fit a radio and a few small devices, but what about the bigger things? What about the things you can't lift into a can? That's where the second method comes in. And it's the one that changed how I think about my whole house. Let me explain. The second way is what I call the room method. Now, the Amish don't power their homes the way we do, but they're not against tools. They're not against radios or certain machines or the technology that helps them work the land. What they're against is dependence. Dependence on systems they don't control. And that mindset is exactly why one Amish craftsman I met built something I'd never seen before. He took an ordinary room, a small storage room off his workshop, and he turned the entire room into a Faraday cage. How? He lined the walls, the ceiling, and the floor with metal, sheet metal panels, the kind used for roofing, overlapping at the seams so there were no gaps. He grounded, nothing fancy. He just made sure every panel touched the next one, metal to metal, all the way around the room. The door was the tricky part. He framed it with metal and lined the inside of the door with the same sheeting, and where the door met the frame, he ran a strip of copper that pressed tight when the door closed, so even the door sealed the shell completely. Now think about what that means. Instead of a tiny can holding a radio, he had an entire room, a room he could walk into, a room that could hold his generator, his power tools, his backup batteries, his charging equipment, everything that mattered, a whole protected space built into a building he already owned. And here's the part that stopped me cold. He told me his grandfather had done the same thing. Decades earlier, long before most people had ever heard the word electromagnetic. How did they know? Because of lightning. Amish barns and homes get hit by lightning, same as anybody's. And over the years, they noticed something. The buildings with metal roofs, the metal roof barns, the equipment inside them survived strikes that destroyed equipment in wood-roofed buildings nearby. They figured out, through plain observation, that the metal carried the energy around the outside and left the inside untouched. They didn't have the textbook, they had the experience. An experience that gets passed down for 100 years becomes something stronger than a textbook. It becomes wisdom. Now, here's where the cost of not knowing this really bites. A whole room shield like this, if you hired a contractor to build it and called it an EMP shielded room, would cost you thousands. I've seen companies quote $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 for a shielded room. The Amish craftsman built his for the cost of the leftover roofing metal from another job, a few $100s in materials, the rest was his own two hands. That's the gap. That's the money that gets pulled out of your pocket. Not because the work is hard, because somebody convinced you it was complicated. It isn't. But I promised you 3 methods. And I told you the third one is the one I care about most. The one I found buried in an old document. Before I get to that, I have to stop and tell you something because I know exactly who's watching this right now. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people building from scratch or people with a workshop full of roofing metal, stay with me because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to build a room. You don't need to buy a trash can. You don't need a single permit, and you don't need a contractor. If your house was built before 1980, you may already have something most modern homes don't. A metal-lined closet, or a spot you can turn into one in under an hour. Here's what you do. Find an interior closet, one with no windows. The smaller, the better. A coat closet works. A pantry works. Now, most older homes were built with materials we don't use much anymore, and one of those materials is a real advantage here. But even if your walls are just plain drywall, you can fix that fast. You take heavy-duty aluminum foil, not the thin stuff, the heavy-duty roll. And you also grab a roll of that aluminum furnace tape. You line the inside walls of the closet with the foil, overlap each strip by a few inches. Tape every seam with the aluminum tape so the foil pieces connect into one continuous sheet. Do the back wall, both side walls, the ceiling, the floor. You can lay foil down and cover it with a piece of cardboard or a thin rug so you don't tear it walking in. The door is the last piece. You line the inside of the closet door with foil too. And here's the trick that makes it actually work. Along the edge of the door, where it meets the frame, you want the foil on the door to touch the foil on the wall when the door closes. Some folks tuck a strip of foil so it folds over and presses against the door edge. That contact all the way around is what closes the shell. When that door shuts, you've got a sealed metal skin around the whole little space. Now you have a Faraday closet built into the house you already own for less than $20 in foil and tape. You keep your spare radio in there, your backup phone, a solar charger, a small set of two-way radios so you can reach family across town when the cell towers are dead, a spare controller for your well pump if you've got one, and the day a surge comes through, all of it survives. You walk into that closet, you pull out a working radio, and you find out what's happening in the world while your neighbors are standing in their driveways holding dead phones. That's the difference. That's what this knowledge buys you, and it costs less than a tank of gas. I want you to sit with how strange that is. The companies sell the fear, and then they sell you the expensive cure. But the real cure was always cheap. It was always simple. It was always sitting in the kitchen drawer next to the foil you use for leftovers. Somebody benefited from you not knowing that. Now, let me get to the third method. The one I've been holding back, this is the one I found in a place I never expected. Back when I started digging into all this, I wasn't satisfied with the trash can and the room. I wanted to know how the people who study this for real, the engineers, the defense folks, how they protect the most sensitive equipment in the world. So I went looking through old technical reports, and I found something, a defense study from 1963, the era when the military was first taking seriously the idea that a single high-altitude blast could knock out electronics across an entire region. They tested shielding, all kinds of shielding. They wanted to know what actually stopped the energy and what didn't. And buried in the findings was something that almost nobody talks about today. They discovered that a single layer of metal is good, but 2 layers with an air gap or an insulating layer between them is dramatically better. They called it double shielding, nested shielding, 2 shells, one inside the other, not touching. The outer shell takes the hit and spreads the energy, And whatever tiny bit of energy leaks past the first shell gets caught and spread again by the second shell. The protection doesn't just add up, it multiplies. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need a laboratory to do this. You put a box inside a box, you take your devices, you wrap each one in cloth, then you put it inside a cardboard box, and you wrap that whole box in heavy-duty aluminum foil, sealing every seam with tape so it's one continuous metal skin. That's your first shell. Then you take that foil-wrapped box, you set it inside your galvanized metal trash can, lined with cardboard so the foil box doesn't touch the metal can. That's your second shell, lid on, aluminum tape around the seam. Now you've got nested shielding, the exact principle the defense study identified in 1963, built with foil, cardboard, and a trash can from the hardware store. I tested this myself, and I'll tell you what convinced me. The simplest field test anyone can do at home. You take a small radio, a cheap battery radio, tuned to a strong AM station, volume up so you can hear it. You put it inside your finished cage and you close it up. If the cage works, the sound cuts out. The signal can't get through the metal shell. Dead silence. I put a radio inside the single trash can. The station went quiet, but if I pressed my ear close, I could still catch the faintest whisper of it. A tiny leak. Then I put the radio inside the nested setup. The foil box inside the lined can. Nothing. Total silence. Not a whisper. Not a crackle. The energy that snuck past the first shell got stopped dead by the second. That whisper, that tiny leak in the single can, is the difference between a device that survives and a device that gets fried. The defense engineers knew it in 1963, and now you know it too. But here's the question that haunted me. If this was known in 1963, if the principle is this simple, why has almost nobody heard of it? Why are folks still buying $300 boxes that are just a single metal shell? Why isn't this in every home guide, every prepper book, every hardware store pamphlet? Because there's no money in a roll of foil. There's no profit in telling you that the trash can in your garage and the foil in your drawer can protect everything that matters. Nobody can sell you a certificate for that. Nobody can charge you a subscription. Nobody can mark it up 600% and slap a tactical logo on it. The Amish never fell for any of that. They never needed to, because they never bought into the idea that protection has to come from a store, from a system, from somebody else's product. They watched the lightning. They noticed the metal roofs. They built the shells. They passed it down. And while the rest of us were handing over our money, they kept the knowledge alive in workshops in Lancaster County and Holmes County, quietly, the way they keep everything alive, by doing it, by teaching it to the next pair of hands. The knowledge existed. Faraday proved it in 1836. The defense studies confirmed it in 1963. And the Amish lived it the whole time, never once needing a power company or a survival catalog to tell them how to protect their own. That's what you have now. The whole chain, from the science to the buried research, to the people who never stopped using it. Let me put the three methods together for you one more time so you walk away with all of it. Method 1, the trash can. A galvanized steel can lined with cardboard or wool, lid sealed with aluminum tape, $30. Holds your essentials. Start here this weekend. Method 2, the room. Sheet metal lining, the walls, ceiling, and floor of a storage room with a sealed metal door. A few $100s in materials. Protects everything from generators to power tools. The choice if you've got the space and the metal. Method 3, the nested cage. A foil-wrapped box inside the lined trash can, 2 shells not touching, the defense-grade principle from 1963, built for pocket change, the best protection of all three, and the one I trust most. And for those of you in an older home, the foil-lined closet, $20. No permits, no contractor, a working Faraday cage built right into the house you already own. Now let me tell you what to actually keep inside, because a cage full of the wrong things is no help at all. A battery-powered AM and FM radio. Better yet, a shortwave radio so you can hear what's happening far beyond your town. A set of two-way radios so your family can talk across distance when the phones are dead. A spare phone, an old one, loaded with maps and documents and photos, kept charged. A small solar panel and charge controller so you can bring power back once the danger has passed. Spare controllers for anything critical. A well pump, a heating system, the brains of the machines you depend on. and a flash drive or two with your important records, deeds, medical information, the things you'd hate to lose. Wrap each one, keep them off the metal, seal the shell, and forget about them until the day you need them. Because that's the thing about a Faraday cage. You build it once, and then it just waits. No power, no maintenance, no monthly anything. It sits there, silent, ready, asking nothing from you. For a man who spent decades paying for things he didn't need to pay for, that silence is the most beautiful sound there is. I think about the family near Millersburg sometimes. The grain bin in the corner of the workshop that I mistook for storage. It was a Faraday cage built by a grandfather, used by a grandson, holding the tools and the radios and the small machines that family depended on. It cost them almost nothing. It will outlive all of us. And it works on the exact same principle that protected Michael Faraday in that foil-covered room nearly 200 years ago. Nobody sold it to them. Nobody could. So here's where I'll leave you. The grid is not as steady as they told you. The systems we lean on can go dark in 90 seconds, the way Quebec did in 1989. And when that day comes, the people who survive it well won't be the ones who spent the most money. They'll be the ones who kept a little bit of old knowledge alive. You just recovered some of that knowledge. It was always yours. Somebody just made sure you never went looking for it. If you're the kind of person who believes that real practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside so somebody else could sell you the expensive version, then you already know what to do next. Tell me which method you're going to build first. The trash can, the room, or the nested cage, or the foil closet. If you're in an old house like so many of us are, write it in the comments right now. I read them and I answer them. And I want to know which one you trust most after what you just heard. And I'm curious about one more thing. Did you do the radio test? Because the first time that station goes dead silent inside your own cage, something clicks in your head and you finally believe it with your own ears. Tell me what you used. Tell me if it worked. If this is the kind of knowledge you want more of, the old ways the systems hoped you'd forget, then join the rest of us who are bringing it back, one method at a time. We're not subscribers. We're a group of people recovering what was taken. Because next, I'm going to show you how the Amish keep a cellar cold enough to store meat through the summer with no electricity and no compressor. There's one detail about the way they dig the entrance that changes everything, and almost nobody gets it right. I'll see you there. Build your cage first, and keep what's yours, yours.